There is no distinction between the medicine, the cult, and the vision. Paul says he went to the third heaven. How do you think he got there? You can produce a generation of people who have been modified, those who have been put through the regimen that makes them the offspring of the serpent. Again, I'm just taking this from text. Using the snake is a part of the cult. It is the vehicle for vision. It's the vehicle for enlightenment. Something they are doing with their exposure to these venom-producing animals is causing them to elevate the species. I experienced the Incubus. I experienced the voice of the Muse. They both said the same thing. They just muttered like they were being forced. They said a legion of demons was going to help me bring the Antichrist. When we see what the Christ actually is, we obtain the antidote. Your knowledge of the reality will free you. The fall of Christianity, the fall of Rabbinical Judaism, the fall of Catholicism, the fall of monism will come only with the application of the Antichrist, which is the remedy. The remedy is that knowledge, that self-awareness. Who are you? You're a dude that lives in a universe where another dude was caught at 4 a.m. with a naked kid, arrested and publicly executed, and you turned him into a god. That's your reality. That's who you are.
Dr. Ammon Hillman, welcome to Polarity.
Oh, God, it's good to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Josh.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. And this is not the first time we've tried to do this. Feels like we had a few forces trying to stop this thing happening, but we're here now, and we're going to make it happen today. The core of your argument is that Western civilization kind of spawned from a culture where drug use and sex was rampant, and that the original ancient Greek version of the Bible, which is the Septuagint, kind of details all of this. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't really have an idea or theory about it. I just translate a whole bunch of texts that use the terms that we know, like Christing, in the context of the application of drugs within cult. So Christing is a cult thing. And that's what I do is I read these texts and then bring that information forward. I don't really have a theory about it. I can just tell you what I've been exposed to.
Yeah, and that's why I find you really interesting, because I only got put onto your work, I would say, in the last couple of months, and ever since then, I've been pretty hooked because I guess, like you said, you're not really trying to spin a certain narrative. You're kind of just saying, here is exactly what it says, without any kind of manipulation or twisted narrative from it. The modern Bible that we have, right, is from my understanding, is translated from Hebrew, which was translated from Greek. So there's almost this kind of lineage of potential Chinese whispers and opportunity for things to be twisted into a certain story.
Right, right. And you can take the New Testament that we know is originally Greek, right? The question is, we have this tradition that the Old Testament was from old Hebrew documents that were then translated somewhere 3rd, 2nd centuries BC into the Greek that we have. The problem is the Greek is so much more technically sophisticated that you cannot produce a translation that makes sense if you start with the Hebrew. The level of technical expertise in the Greek language itself is far above that. And this is, Josh, this is all a science, right? Classical philology is just translation. We are not there to give you theology. We're not there to give you any sort of methodology, for example. You see that methodology in the Danny Jones bit. But I'm here to tell you, this is all about the language, the beauty of the language, the complexity, the brilliance, and the history that it tells us.
It's interesting you say that. There's a guy, obviously, on my channel, I talk a lot about the UFO space and sort of the things that come out of there. And there's this guy called Colonel Carnell, and he comes from like an army intelligence background. And he talks a lot about the sort of esoteric nature of reality. And one of the things that he spoke about is the fact that our language, the English language, is almost like a barrier in a sense to kind of learning the real truth about reality because we're limited by our language. So it's interesting to hear you say that the Greek, being such a complex language, kind of tells a story that's hard to fathom because our interpretation is sort of limited. It's kind of like the same thing. And I'm actually kind of glad that this did get delayed a little bit, because between the last time we spoke and today, I kind of had this penny drop moment where a lot of the things you talk about kind of made a lot of sense with where we're at with the world today. And I do want to get to all of that, but I think we'll start at the start. And like you said, you're trained in this stuff. So you're not just a random guy on the internet. How long have you studied ancient Greek?
So, let's see, it was total time 35 to 36 years. I started when I went into university. So I did my bachelor's, master's, and PhD in classics, specifically Greek. People work in different areas. I worked in Greek medicine, right? Greek documents that are about medicine. I also had to do Latin as well, right? But the difference between those two languages, classicists will be a little bit reticent to admit it, but behind closed doors, they'll tell you freely. Greek and Latin are not the same thing. Greek has achieved a level that other languages have not. Let me just give you an example. There's 1.5 million moving parts of meaning in ancient Greek. There are 7,000 in Hebrew. 7,000 unique words in ancient Hebrew, right? Greek, giant capacity. And why is that? Why did Greek get to that level that Latin didn't? And Josh, I don't want to blow smoke up your butt. This is not a theory. Lucretius, the ancient Roman poet, stands up and says, I'm sorry I have to write my poetry to you in Latin, because really, if I wanted to capture the complexities of my subject, I would have to write to you in Greek. So this is not, something that was unknown from antiquity. Greek was steamrolling the world, taking over, just destroying little tiny languages that just got out of the egg and hatched, and Greek came along, stomped them to death. And
do you have any idea of why? Like, why is that? Why is this language that is so old just seemingly almost like, otherworldly in its advancement compared to everything else that was around it? Like, is there anything written about that on why they were so far ahead of everyone else?
The Greeks love to, when I say Greek, I mean people who spoke this language. See, people think the ancient world was divided into nation states, and no. There are languages that dominate, and the cultures of these languages form groups. And Greek is full of these different dialects from different times, just spreading across the Mediterranean. And why does it have that power? They're talking about it all the time themselves, the Greek speakers, who are of all different nationalities, right? What you and I call ethnicities. They're of all different types, but they're all unified by one thing. They use Mother Greek. That's what they do. Why is it so much? Why is she so much more beautiful? In a beauty contest, right? There's no ancient languages and modern, you can throw it in there. Your English is just a wholesale theft of ancient Greek. Why? It's because of the magic that she possessed. She is extremely flexible, extremely flexible. This language can turn itself in different shapes. My God, man, it just by itself uses particles that nobody has. It creates, it tells you what I am saying in this sentence connects to the one before it this way. It'll connect to the one after it that way. It's amazing. It's an amazing, absolutely amazing language, and its vocabulary went through the roof. Why? Because it has units that it's able to build. For example, let me give you an example. You can put prefixes on a Greek verb and change the meaning of that verb. For example, Christing, chrio, means to be stung by the gadfly, right? Oh, God, I'm Christed, they say from the stage in Athens. Aeschylus said, oh, I'm Christed with this mania, this prophetic mania. Oh, God. Now you can take that word Christ, chrio, and you can add to the front of it. Oh, let's try kata. What does that mean? It means to thoroughly medicate that individual, to thoroughly Christ them. Ah, it's gorgeous. Now, what if I add another one on top of that? You get a completely different, modified concept. So, what Greek does, and I'll give you the secret here. I'm just going to show you the entire secret to the Greek. What the Greek is able to do is to give the user the ability to coin new terms. If you have a concept in your mind that doesn't have an equivalent in the language, Greek can allow you to express it. There's a phenomenon in classics when you're studying Greek called the hapax legomenon. And people will tell you, oh, it means this one appearance of this word. It's the only time we have it attested, right? Oh, God, why do we have so many hapax legomena, words that only appear once, if we have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Greek sources? Why do we have words that only appear once? Why is it that some authors will have every third word will be something that I've never seen this thing? It only appears here. It's because the people who are using the Greek are creating vocabulary themselves. Think about that, Josh. I know you don't create English vocabulary. You and I, we don't come up with new words as we're walking around to explain things that we don't have a title for. You know what I mean? So that's the magic of Greek. Greek enables its user to be able to do that. And that's why it was so successful for such a long period of time. Classicists studied Greek from 1000 BC down to 1000 Anno Domini. 2,000 years of this incredible, just elite gymnast of a language.
Why isn't it used anymore? Like, if this language is so versatile and powerful, at what point was there a decision to stop using it, or why is it not used anymore?
You can look to antiquity for that answer. Greek tends not toward higher sophistication, but toward degeneration. And what do I mean by that? There's all sorts of ancient Greek authors, people like Galene, who are concerned that the language is deteriorating toward a commonality, right? There is a movement. Each of the dialects of Greek, people don't realize this, and Bible scholars think Koine Greek is some kind of different language because they don't actually read Greek. They pretend to, but they don't. And if you shove it in their face and try to force them to read a text, they can't. That each of the dialects of Greek that develop degenerates into a form that they call Koine. The ancient Greek grammarians call Koine. Remember, grammar is a Greek invention. It's a Greek word, grammata. or your letters or your writing. Greek grammarians, right? When the Romans are building huts, right? When there is no Hebrew in existence, the Greek grammarians are sitting around trying to figure out the histories of words and etymologies and trying to describe how their language grows. And they tell us, hey, what happens is language degeneration under barbaric influence is causing this beautiful Attic Greek to become Koine, to become common. People like Galene come along. Lucian does the same thing. They come along and they say, hey, we need to elevate. We need to get back to that higher form that they had in Athens when they made the democracy. Remember that, with all the stage play and the fucking architecture and all the glory? We need to get back to that language and the use of that language. So the Greeks themselves would tell you, Mother Greek will degenerate unless, I mean, imagine if your language had the capacity to walk you through new terminology, for you yourself to pull new words out of the air. If your language had that capacity and you begin to embrace a sedentary lifestyle of not creating words, but relying on the most useful, right? You turn from that gymnasium to the place of making profit. And what happens? You degenerate. Your language degenerates. Many authors in antiquity helped to restore that purity. They called it a purity. Oh, it's a purity of the language. Anywho, notice that all of your sciences, right, geometry, right, all of your math, notice these things. People like to credit the Egyptians, and I like to kick the Egyptians in their backsides and say, you made giant slabs of, took rock and piled it up and made pyramids. Big fucking deal. The Greeks created the theaters where everybody came together to be purged and elevated, to be cleansed and elevated, to create this concept of democracy, right? Oh God.
I love. I love. I mean, dude, you're clearly very well read on this stuff, right? So why, when you're talking about the fact that there seemed. I mean, you wrote a book called "The Chemical Muse," drug use and the roots of Western civilization. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
So, and this book kind of got you fired. Is that right?
The book was my dissertation expanded. Once
Right.
it was the chapter that I had. My committee told me, if you want the warrant, the degree warrant, you've got to take out this chapter on recreational drug use, because the Romans just wouldn't do that, and delete any references in the rest of the dissertation to recreational drug use. Right. So
Right. So there's people trying to kind of censor what you have to say or sanitize it. But
correct.
what I find interesting is that no one really seems to be willing to kind of debate you on this sort of stuff, or like go toe to toe with you. Why is that? Like, are you the only person that is seeing what these words mean and translating them? And like, surely other people who are studying the same thing as you are reading these words. Why aren't they interpreting it the same way you are?
That's the exact problem. You said, surely other people are reading these exact things. No, they're not. One great example you're going to see in the Danny Jones interview. Why haven't you read Galene? For fuck's sake, Galene is probably 10% of all the Greek we've got. Do you understand? We have thousands of works. Do you understand? I mean, volumes. You're never going to get through all of ancient Greek in one classicist lifetime. I read new stuff every day. Every day. For example, we just talked about grammarians. How many classicists do you think read ancient grammarians? Maybe 4 or 5 in the country, right? But here in the US, in the world, I don't know, maybe you could get a room full of 20 people who've actually gone through, used their skill that they learned. Because remember, classicists learn a skill. That skill is the translation of this complex language across 2,000 years of history. Try that with English sometime. Try reading me Beowulf, right? Go ahead. Get your average person on the street to translate that. And that's only half the time that you have to cover with ancient Greek, right? So classicists don't read certain genres. Medicine is one of them. Nobody reads the drug stuff. There's an author named Philomenus. Nobody is going to read him ever.
Why is
And
no
the
one
fun,
reading the drug stuff? Do you think that's happening for a reason? People, classicists that are coming up in the modern day being sort of steered away from certain texts? Do you think?
yeah, it's partially the demand for the popular sources like Homer, tragedy, right? History,
Mm.
Thucydides and Herodotus. They're the big authors that you must be exposed to. But those are only a few of all the authors from antiquity. Yeah, they may be some of the most popular, but
So
it's
kind of like the
only
industry standard, these are like the industry standard that to be respected in your position, you sort of have to know these guys. But you're saying when you
correct.
go outside of that area and you read some of these other texts, they tell that they add a whole other side to the whole story.
They do. And another part of the reason people don't read them in classics is the technical area. You have to develop a technical expertise while you're reading these. Galen has a whole bunch of pharmacological vocabulary. Unless you've been exposed to it, it's a pain in the ass to read, right?
Mm.
The author that I was just telling you about, Philomenus, he's contemporary with everything that's happening with Jesus. And he talks about Christing. And he talks about venoms and anti-venom. He
Yeah,
talks
let's
of,
go there.
yeah,
Let's go
yeah.
there now because you said one of the main areas that people aren't reading is medicine, and I know pharmacon is one of the words that you reference a lot. So let's go to pharmacon, Christing, and let's talk about some of the text. Maybe if you can even do a couple of translations for us, and talk about some of the things that are misinterpreted or not interpreted at all.
Let's put up here Homer. Look, people, this is the oldest, some of the oldest Greek that we've got, right? Homer. Look at what it is, 8th century. My God, man, do you know what's coming out of the rest of the world then? Lists of palace goods. That's what's coming out of the rest of the world. What are the Greeks doing with their gorgeous language? Are you ready? Look on the second line here in yellow. You see Chriestai. What does this say? It says Odysseus. Look at the very first word, pharmakon. There it is. Odysseus is out looking for androphonon pharmakon, a man-killing drug. Why? Ofra hoiei ius Chriestai halgerias. What is he doing? He's doing it so that he may Christ his arrows, right? With it. Wait, what? Yes, the first time we see Odysseus, he is out looking for a potent, death inducing drug. And he's got to Christ his arrows with it. You see? You wondered
So,
why all those guys
what
dropped
does
like that.
Christing what does Christing mean in that context? Is it the actual drug itself, or is it the application of it?
In this case, it is the application Chriestai of the pharmakon, the drug. So it's the way that they are applying the drug. And you are taking these creams and these oils and you Christ them. You can Christ your eyes, for example. If you have amblyopia at the time, remember this is the world of the Hippocratics, right? If you have amblyopia at the time where your eyes don't work well or you got dimmed vision, you can Christ your eyes with a collurion. That is, what is a colurion? It is a combination of drugs that is used specifically in a form that is Christed into the eyes. Right? Oh, here's
And
Euripides.
does it explain what the drug is? Like what is the compound? What is it made of that they're applying to their eyes?
Oh, yeah. No, there are authors who write entire lists of these different Christing compounds. And
Right.
you wouldn't believe the stuff that they're Christing. They're Christing first of all, every sort of plant, things that you wouldn't expect for them to Christ, things that are maybe dangerous to Christ. I'm not putting that into my eyes, right? Every conceivable plant, they're doing venoms, spiders, scorpions, snakes, sea animals.
And
Right.
is this like in a medicinal sense or are they getting high off of it or both?
There is no distinction between the medicine, the cult, and the vision. The prophets are prophets because they Christ, right? Paul says he went to the third heaven, right? How do you think he got there? Right? He's immune. For fuck's sake, he's immune to viper venom. Viper is the drug. Viper venoms, the Bacchans are carrying them, right? And you don't, by the way, you don't eat these, the venoms of the snakes. You don't eat them. You put them on an alabastron and you insert them rectally, or you Christ them into the eyes. Why? Why would you have to do that? Because they recognize that the venoms don't work if you pass them through digestion. They're just proteins. They get chopped up.
So
Good.
these texts are literally saying these people are putting viper venom. They're ingesting viper venom anally.
Correct. And Christing it, right? The echidnaic venom. We have all sorts of descriptions of the use of this. Even Galene gives us instructions about how to make the formulae that contain the viper venom. And what's amazing is they discuss all the antidotes and they discuss what to do in case, right? The person has not been envenomated, bitten, but has taken the drug intentionally to induce the death state. Right?
Induce the
What
death state.
the death state is that from which you are resurrected in order to be born again. This is the language that they have developed. The original sotera, the original savior, right? You hear that? Sounds very Christian. It is the word. The original savior is a woman who uses these poisons. They call her Iochaira, the poison pour. And Eos is that word for venom, right? The Iochaira is the Artemis, the huntress, who gives you life through birth. Isn't that neat? Now, practically, this cult, the cult of Diana, was using these arrow poisons to induce birth as within what we would call midwifery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Medicine, right? So it's absolutely gorgeous, right? And go back to the 39.
Why are they on?
Go
Why
ahead.
are they on like arrows? Like if this is like a form of midwifery to induce birth, are they actually being like shot from an arrow as is depicted here? Like, is this the same thing?
No. It's just the drugs that they're using. The same drugs they're using on their arrows are found in the combos that they're giving to women to induce birth. So
Right.
what is it? What is it doing? It's described specifically as putting the woman into a sleep coma. Painlessly, she delivers. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it causing contraction of the smooth
Mm-hmm.
muscle? Is that why the uterus is contracting and you're delivering that child while the woman is in a drugged euphoric state? The very same paralytics that they're using on the arrows are part of the medicine. So you really can't distinguish, right? This is a hunting cult. And some of these groups that are using this are specifically women only, Scythians, tribes of Scythian women, women who can only mate once they've had 3 scalps. They've obtained 3 scalps from combat. So these people are fearsome. The Romans couldn't beat them. It's the one tech that handed the Romans their ass in antiquity. They lost their legionary standard to these arrow wielding horse cultures. That we've dug these people up. We just showed last year, I think it was, the pelvises of the people are shifted. The ladies' pelvises are shifted. These women who ride these, they're constantly on horseback. And their fingers, the bones in their fingers are bent. They found this in excavations. They're bent because of their constant use of the bow. The Romans could not stop a group of women who are facing backwards. This is what they said. They're facing backwards at a gallop, shooting arrows, right, off the back of the horse, hitting the Romans that are pursuing them. The Romans can never catch them and they get wiped out. They're using paralytics. Those arrows just have to nick you and you're on the ground foaming at the mouth, right?
Wow.
Poisons, yeah.
That's
Poisons
wild.
in the hair.
And a lot of these artwork that you use, which is great, by the way. I've been in a lot of your live streams recently, and I'm a big fan of the artwork that comes up. It's fantastic. I've noticed a lot of it. You use the color purple, and you talk about the color purple when you're speaking about these drugs, and I guess the application of them. So, what is the significance of purple, and like where does that come from?
Yeah, so there is a trade and an industry for manufacture of a purple dye in antiquity that's made from the murex, a little shelled creature in the water that you have to process to get its little bits out to make the dye. The industry for this stuff was huge. For example, the Phoenicians. The people will talk about the Phoenicians. It just means purple, right? These are the people who are using the purple. And when you say somebody is doing the Phoenician, when you say that, it's a Greek word. When somebody is doing the Phoenician, it means that they are committing cunnilingus. Do you understand? They are performing oral intercourse. Heracles' dogs get this purple all over their mouths. And that's how they're characterized. They're characterized, this cult. Heracles is the leader of a cult, man. He's got temples all over the place. It's boys only, and the only woman that's allowed is Medea, the echidnic priestess who can start the whole fucking rite, right? By the way, you see these very same drugs, Josh, used by the Christians, by the apostles themselves in the Apocrypha, the works of the real Christian Bible, Christian works that were circulating, right, in the 2nd and 3rd centuries that ultimately were dropped. These contain the people using these very drugs. Jesus himself is involved in the drug use. People are accusing the apostles of being magoi. What is a magus? It's a drug wielder. You're not going to have visions. One of the really cool things that I think we miss by not really reading our sources carefully, guys like Pliny tell us, hey, if you want to extract information from a conspirator, how do you do it? You go get yourself a magus. Those people will drug prisoners and extract information, acting like they're demons to the person who is stoned. So all they got to do is bring out the fear with the drugs, and you can get somebody to tell you exactly what they've been doing and who they've been doing it with and what you should look out for. Right? People don't understand that drugs are such an integral part of the ancient world that they're used in ways that we don't even fathom. We can't even imagine that they do that. When my dissertation committee told me you have to remove the chapter on recreational drugs, the head of the department told me the reason is the Romans just wouldn't do such a thing. And I realized we are imprinting our ideology, our theology, our belief system. We're imprinting it on this history. And that's bullshit. You can cut through all of that with just looking at the sources. Just looking at the sources, yeah.
People are just basically kind of pushing what they assume or what they believe a group of people would do or how they would be, rather than just kind of objectively looking at what it actually says. And and like I said, I had that penny drop moment, dude, where, because it feels like there are, potentially the people that are running the world, the global elite, whatever you want to call them. You've got these people coming out as like whistleblowers, basically saying that they've been witness or even part of weird, like ritualistic ceremonies where potentially drugs and things like that were being used. And it makes me wonder, this was my penny drop moment, and this could just be a bullshit theory, so feel free to tell me if I'm wrong. It makes me wonder if the sanitization of these stories is intentional as a way to preserve like power and knowledge. Like people who can run the show today know about this stuff, still practice this kind of stuff. But if everyone knew about it, it would kind of create a chaotic world. And the preservation of what these texts actually say and what these people were actually doing is a way that they sort of maintain this like power hierarchy in the world. What do you think about that?
Oh, God, it's such a brilliant question because it's taken everything into consideration and saying, what is moving this universe? What is the physics of this universe? I think it's undeniable that the ancient mystery captured some part of nature that created a vessel of communion. And this vessel of communion was a priestess. Her flesh and her blood, they said, were life. But her venom was death. And with that, she can make you be born again to see the things. Now, wait a minute. Is this something from just nature itself? Like they're taking human beings, they're subjecting them to different drugs. I've read, you're going to talk about ceremonies and whatnot. I've read about a ceremony. A Christian was writing about something that a sect was doing, very detailed. And he said they're impregnating specific girls, timing it to where they take them out of the, they extract the fetus early. They extract the fetus early and take its blood that is then used within one of their rites to give the recipient health. Then you've got ritual that has to do with the ejaculation of the medicine. And the more I was looking at this stuff, God, they have even terms, right? The Dark Harbor is the place that you go that contains that drug. There is a point where Medea removes the drug from her vagina, and you'd think this would be new. Right? You thought, that's odd. I've never seen that. But no, there's another example of it. Same thing. What are we putting in our vagina? The vagina is a place, it's an incubatorium for drugs. It's a place where nature brings death and pumps into it life. That's how they looked at it. They thought the process of birthing was that magical grave coming to life. Anywho, lots of drugs that they're using in ways again that you don't anticipate. You know.
Yeah. Like it seems like these people, their perspective on, I guess, the world, reality, and how to establish like a connection with something higher was very much rooted in like ceremonial practices, drug taking, like drugs and ceremony and ritual were kind of an essential conduit to connecting to something like higher. Is that, would that be correct
Yeah,
in saying that?
definitely, and I think that links to your last question.
Yeah.
The first time that I saw sex as a treatment, as a medical treatment, it made I felt stupid, to be honest, because this doctor that I was reading was talking about the treatment of depression, what you and I would call depression, melancholia, right? They called it depression. How do you treat your depression? Through intercourse. And I thought, dang, I wonder if drugged intercourse is some kind of place that you're
And it,
supposed to put
where was that said?
yourself.
Sorry, where was that
Where,
said?
a physician that I was reading,
Like say ancient Greek?
from the Greek medical papyri, the 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 PGM. No, it's not the PGM. You threw me a curveball. No. It's from the Corpus Medicorum Graecorum. There we go. The CMG has a whole just scads and scads and scads of nameless, unknown physicians. Some a little bit popular, but not popular enough to ever be read.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, and I cannot remember the specific author now.
That's okay. But it's
If it comes
ancient
to
Greek.
mind, I'll let you know. But he was talking about treating different, what we would call mental or psychological problems, and one of them was melancholia that you treat through intercourse. And it suddenly clicked with me when I read that. I thought, wait a minute, is that why in the rite, in the mystery, that there is a conjunction of that sexual orgasm with the orgy itself, right? That orgasm is just the product. What is the orgasm, dude? It's the product of that orgy, that rite, that natural rite that you are a part of, right? For some reason, when they blast your brain to the other side and you end up dying and rising from the dead through the drugs they're using, they're bringing you to a state of orgasm to send you into it. Is it doing something to your brain? I don't know. But I kind of want to find out. And I'm not going to get there unless I bring the holy blowjob, right? It's sitting there in the text, and people don't want to see it. They don't want to see the holy blowjob. I tried to bring it on Danny Jones, so we won't talk about it much.
We'll save that for Danny's, which will be coming out pretty soon. But just to kind of pull back to I'm still trying to pull you in on my theory a little bit here. So you're telling me that in these ancient Greek texts, they're speaking of sex not just as like a recreational thing, but as almost like a medicinal and ritualistic thing. They're also speaking about taking drugs, some of which are like venoms, bodily fluids, in again a medicinal, recreational, ritualistic sense, right? And then you've got modern religion, which completely flips all of those things, right? It tells you, recreational casual sex is not a good thing. It obviously tells you drugs and anything like that is a sin, right? It kind of flips everything that you're saying and turns it into a bad thing. And then at the very same time, we've got, for example, the amount of controversy around pedophilia in the Catholic Church. You've got people speaking out about high level people from governments in England, Australia as well, that are performing things that sound very similar to the kind of rituals and practices that these texts seem to talk about. So it feels like to me, like the way I look at that is that these people who are kind of setting the show up are pretty much running by this ancient Greek playbook. Like they know these things, and these things are still being kind of practiced at the highest level today. but to control the rest of society, they've kind of flipped and sanitized religion and made everyone think all of these things are inherently bad. That's just my interpretation of that. And like, do you see where I'm coming from? Do you agree with it? Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I have to say the closest I can come to an answer is talking with somebody who was raped by a priest. And he told me face to face, he said, they made a movie about him too. This was in Boston. He said, what I described in my talk was exactly what was in the eyes of the priest that raped him. And he was tearing. And so I kind of felt like, possibly it was genuine, what was coming out of him, and I should pay attention to it. I still don't fully understand what he meant.
What
But
did he say?
I know the physics of the mystery are echoed in things that you see with, let's just say, Epstein,
Yeah.
right? Things that there's something in the nature. Imagine if instead of on Epstein Island just treating these young girls this way, imagine if we set them up with a drug regimen. Imagine if we put them into a specific mental place. Imagine if we trained them so that they could affect the mystery, so that their bodies were producing the blood that gives us life, right? The essence that gives us life, the water of life. Where is that water of life coming from? The first time that I read in Galene that he was talking about vaginal excreta of somebody who's a minor and the differences in the development of that excreta, what it looks like at different stages. Oh my God. I thought to myself, what were these people doing? What were these people doing? If I Christ you with crow shit, it's going to sharpen your vision. Well, haven't you listened to the prophets of Apollo? Right? Don't you know who is his oracular voice? The priesthood. Who are these people? They're fucking guitarists. They're fucking musicians creating, composing music that is used in ritu, in rites, right? In the performance of the rite with the drugs. So, is there something in the modern, could one of the billionaires who's owns some kind of underground bunker or something, could they reestablish this right? Definitely comes down to physics, right? So definitely they could. If they could, you have to be tempted to say somebody along the way is gonna figure it out and try it, right? Is gonna try to produce. And anybody who asks me, can you do this? You have to have the cup. You have to have her. You can substitute for the virgin, you can substitute Ganymede and the physics work. Right? Right? Blessed are the eunuchs. What do you need? You need a kid that doesn't have those male hormones yet, because for some reason it screws up the system and they can't ejaculate the communion anymore. Right? But the girl doesn't have to worry about that, right? Because she's not going to be undergoing those hormones. Part of the reasons that she's not going to be getting all those male hormones is because they're actually giving her venoms. Those venoms, people don't realize that viper venom is a prolactin inducer. It'll cause you to lactate, right? Oh my God, seriously? So we can create a 12-year-old who's a cup, whose body has been modified over time to create the perfect instrument of shooting ourselves across the void to death and then bringing ourselves back. You know how we get back? Through her breast milk. But wait a minute, she's only 12. Yeah, and she's 6'6". What? That's what they call that production, the offspring of the serpent, they called it. I'm not kidding you. I'm reading a text right now. Right now, it's the Acts of Philip. Go look it up. It's early Christian Bible, and it talks about this. It's
Dude, that's
amazing.
wild. That's
Absolutely
wild.
amazing. Yeah,
Like, it almost sounds like they are describing the human body like some kind of chemical processor. Like our body is almost like a tool to produce. Like you can give it an input and it will create an output through our biological systems that we have, which is maybe not. Well, it actually kind of is an interesting parallel because, again, going sort of across to the UFO world, which is a big sort of area that I look into, there are lots of whistleblowers that have come out who have allegedly said things like, our bodies are seen as like a vessel or a container. And a lot of the time people assume that that means like a container for the soul or something like that, which that might be true as well. But it's interesting to hear this, in that our body could be a vessel to kind of transmute chemicals as well, that we can kind of produce things that create
and
life
and
or
and it has a potential. That body cannot just transmute, but it can itself reach a potential. You can become the virgin viper. What? Huh? Like what? You would be surprised how many of these exist in antiquity that you didn't know about. It's a
what do you mean by
state.
that?
It's a state that is brought out in an individual. They called them the Dracaeni, right? Clytemnestra is one of these.
What is that?
Right? They're those who have been put through the regimen that makes them the offspring of the serpent. They called her the Echidna Mater, the mother Echidna. Again, I'm just taking this from text.
Keep going. You're blowing my
You can
mind.
produce, in other words, you can produce a generation of people who have been modified. Call them the offspring of the viper.
Oh my
Right?
God.
She is the virgin viper. We understand that she is half viper, half what you and I would call human. What happened to her? She had her mortality burned off. She had her mortality burned off. It's the craziest. One of the biggest, most prominent cults is the cult of Demeter at the Eleusinian Mysteries. And part of that cult is the burning off of the child's mortality. This is slide 28 from the Homeric hymn, right, to Demeter. Look at that Demeter right there at the top. Look at the yellow, Chriesk. There's your word for Christing. She Christs with ambrosia. What is she Christing? She's Christing that child that they are transforming. They are fumigating with the seeds of fire. Now, the first time I read that, I was like, oh God, please. What the hell? There is so much tech wrapped into the Greek language, so many concepts that they pulled out of the air with pharmacology, right? And with the mystery itself. There's so many words that you have to develop an ability to use the technical lingo. And that's how complex this whole mystery thing is that when you burn off the child's mortality, you're setting it on that pathway to the divinity. This is now the child of God. Do you understand? The sons of God. What marks the sons of God? Everybody looks to Enoch, right? What marks the sons of God? Their knowledge of the drugs, their knowledge of the technical crafts, the metallurgy, right? Something happens to the human brain that you can potentiate it with the use of the venom. You can potentiate it. I'm not talking about taking it once. I'm talking about a lifetime, taking that child, that newborn, and subjecting it to the most awful, painful fumigations. Oh, God. Right? What are we doing? We're growing the child. That's your problem, that you don't do that because you're a barbarian. You just let your kids, just let them go. And there stay the little meat sacks they are. You couldn't make Medusae if you tried, right? You couldn't make that venom carrier if you tried. It's a rigorous process that requires a lot of tech that we don't give a shit about, but is sitting there in these texts. Yes, some billionaire could put this together and roll out for us the cup. But until they bring us the cup, they haven't gotten anywhere,
So
right? It doesn't work.
let me just wrap my head around this, because like I said, you're blowing my mind because it connects to a bunch of other things that I talk about on the channel. When they're doing this process to these children, you're saying they're fumigating them and they're burning off their mortality. So this child will grow up into so they're going to grow into an immortal being. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes,
Right.
correct. You're, yeah.
And you mentioned that they are. You said something about them being like half viper or serpent or something like that. Can you sort of explain that a little bit more?
Yes, sure. So, with all the tech, with all the drug tech that is being used, there has to be a college behind it. There has to be some kind of group or practice that perpetuates the knowledge, that perpetuates the capacity to do this. And the group that possesses this knowledge is the same group that's sitting up on the Black Sea using the poison arrows, getting for itself a reputation for being the front of the pharmacology. For example, what the hell am I saying? You take two historical figures, Medea and Circe, two historical figures. We don't understand these women, right? But Odysseus spends a good amount of time being held captive to one of them who drugged all of his men and then tried to drug him. But fortunately, he got a drug before he went into her that was an antidote. So instead, he just slept with her after she put all the drugs in his food and drink. And they made a bargain. Isn't that nice? So he stayed there as her slave and cried a lot on the beach. You're about to see Odysseus in the Odyssey. Bullshit. If he's not sitting there on the beach crying while some woman is abusing him and his men and drugging them, do you understand where those eunuchs are coming from? Blessed are the eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Do you understand the power? Here's Flavius Arrianus with his Polypharmacon. He's describing Circe. What is the word in yellow? Polypharmacon. Look, you see the pharmacon. Polo is just many or much, right? This woman has much knowledge of drugs. And it's this drug knowledge that you asked about the purple. It's this drug knowledge that is the secret to the purple, to the use of the purple throughout the Mediterranean, and to the use of those poisons that are connected with the rituals. So these women who are driving the process of using these drugs and experimenting, by the way, Circe, they say, killed her husband, right? It was one of the Scythian lords that she killed. She was forced to marry him. She poisoned him and killed him. They exiled her to an island with all of her feminine retinue, right? So they created their own society, and people think, oh, this is minor. You have to understand, we have the descriptions of just the architecture of this island from Homer. And it was amazing. Perfectly cut stone. that you couldn't tell the cracks, large blocks, you couldn't tell the cracks between the stone. Cyclopean architecture, absolutely beautiful. A lot of this is being driven by that drug knowledge.
I want to understand properly what you were saying with the children, the burning off their mortality, because to me, you're talking about something that is creating eternal life in a human being, or like you said, half human, half viper. Like, I want to understand this concept a little bit better. And am I correct in saying that this is talking about giving people immortality, people that will live forever?
Yeah, there's a giant mistake in the translations of the Bible that translate Ionic life as eternal life.
Mhm.
You're right. It is creating a life within the individual, but that life is Ionic. It's the same term that Jesus used in John 3:16,
What
right?
does that mean?
Ionic life, it's what we have in the synagogues. It's also represented in the earliest synagogues that we have. The god Ion stands within the circle of the zodiac. Okay. Ion is the invisible god of being. Right. That divinity runs the mystery. The ion is that which is outside of time. Pythagoras said there are 360 ions that bind the timeline, the chronic stream, right? What the process of burning off your mortality does is pull you out of that stream of time to experience the ion. You are given ionic vision. When you come back from this mystery, which, people like Cicero said he wished he'd done it when he was younger because it was fucking eye-opening, right? So the process of going through all this stuff, this visionary stuff, somehow impacts you on the way back in a very positive way, right? They call it the cleansing, the catharsis, right? Those who have akatharsia, they have that pollution. They have not yet been purged by the initiation, right? How can you be born again unless you are purged and cleansed by the Savior? Doesn't that sound like Christianity? It does. And why does it? Because it's using the same tech. Yeah.
Damn, bro. Yeah, that's actually blowing my mind a lot, and it makes me think. Because one thing that I've always looked at with my channel that I found super interesting is that, and that this is what kind of hooked me, was one, the eternal, immortality part of it, but also the fact that you mentioned like half human, half viper. Because in all sort of like creation stories around the world, whether it's like indigenous cultures, or even in the Bible, there's references to it, but there seems to be like versions of serpents. Like, serpents seem to be super significant, not just in Europe, but in like Mesoamerica, even in like ancient Australia's sort of indigenous cultural story. There's this idea that like the snake, the serpent, is super significant. So, like, is there anything more on that in these Greek texts that you can tell me about?
Yeah, that's what's so gorgeous is all of these oracular temples will have associations with holy snakes, snakes that are carefully kept by the temple, right? And I've always wondered because, like other cultures, I noticed other cultures are elevating the snake to the level of a god and
Mm.
associating it with health and healing, and holding up the serpent wound around the staff is the place that's going to bring us salvation, right? It's going to bring us that health, that cosmic health. And I've wondered, is it just due to how these cultures are using the snakes? Is this the reason that the Bacchants are known? Bacchant women called Maenads, and they carry baskets full of snakes and dildos. They're pictured always as wearing the snakes. Using the snake is a part of the cult. It is the vehicle for vision. It's the vehicle for enlightenment. Something they are doing with their exposure to these venom producing animals is causing them to elevate the species. You can take that child and you can create a god out of that child, but you have to do it through the serpent, right? Otherwise, everything's a failure. It's chemistry, straight up chemistry. But is that why other cultures have it? Because you've seen it. You know, why are they always venerating those snakes?
Dude, that's fucking wild. And I think it's like St. Paul's Cathedral. I could be wrong with the name, but it's at the Vatican. And there's like this famous shot of it where like the whole room seems to really represent like the head of the snake. Have you seen that photo?
Yeah, somebody sent me. Yeah, it's in the
Dude,
basement, right?
yeah, yeah. And like, fuck, maybe it's a coincidence, but like when how many things are a coincidence? You know what I mean? Like it's fucking wild, man.
Yeah, yeah, and it's fascinating to find when there is something that looks like it's superior, some kind of tech that looks like it's superior. Like, why did they have something that they wanted to? They claimed they could extend the lifespan of just a normal person, not somebody that's had their mortality burn off and is part of a priesthood, right? And having visions and declaring oracles, not that person. N- uh, Um, but you and I, how is it that you and I can have a transfusion? I swear to you, okay, they have transfusions. I didn't even think they could have that technology because how do you prevent, blood typing, right? And mixing up blood types. Oh, God, what are you going to do? Apparently, this transfusion gave extra years. You could add decades to a person's life. This tech was driving the Theriac search. People are searching for the ultimate Theriac that will make the emperor bigger, stronger, and smarter. Is there something that they're doing with the brain? I've been starting to think, doing this research, is there something? Are they potentiating the brain somehow? Is there some kind of, something special here? I mean, these are people who are inventing words on a daily basis. I I don't think we're smart enough to do that. Personally, I don't think I am. Right?
Mm.
It's the way. Is it the drugs? Is it the snake? We're supposed to be exposed to the snake. They're all using these snake venoms that Hercules goes around to these different oracular sites, killing the dragons, which, by the way, the Greeks themselves explain, we're calling dragons temple guardians, right? They take the venoms away from the dragons because
What, so
those
they're
venoms
referring
are
to
drugs.
dragons? They're referring to dragons as like literal living creatures?
Correct. No, they're referring to They call dragons the dudes that are temple guardians,
Right.
right?
Okay, that's the name they've assigned to a temple guard, a dragon.
Correct. And why? Because they're directly associated with the use of the venoms that are coming from these dragons, right? A dragon, people talk about dragons and fire, not realizing that tech that produces the fire, I told you the seeds of fire they're using in the burning off of the mortality of the child, that's the same tech the dragons are using so that you will be able to, what they call, to breathe the fire, right? And we have descriptions of Medea putting the substance, Christing Jason. It's funny they use the term Christing Jason with this substance that makes him impervious. It puts a little flame around him, makes him impervious to the scorching heat. Right? Wait, what? What the hell are they doing? Well, the Greek Navy took her fire. Right? Here it is. Look at this. Sund elioi pharmakosais. Oh my God. Look at that third word. It's gorgeous. Pharmakosais. What are you doing? You're making drugs. In this case, we're trying to kill pain, and we're Christing these drugs in pharmaceuticized oil. When you say you are Christing with oil, like all the religious people, the rabbis, the priests, the preachers, they'll come out and they'll say, we're the king of Judah, or the person, the prophet. We take the oil, we put it on their head, and that's it. They don't realize that these oils are pharmaceutical products, that they have substances in them that are mind altering. They don't realize that. They think it's like Olive Garden or something. You just take some oil and put it, you know what I mean? And that has come down to the Christian tradition of putting that little chrism there on the forehead. And all of those elements are drugged. And people don't recognize that. You cannot produce the Son of God, or let's say a Son of God. You cannot produce a Son of God without Christing that drugged oil. You're not going to get to the seventh heaven. You're not going to see. Haven't you read any of these prophets? You've read some of these prophets, right? I'm having my vision. I'm in the spirit and I'm having my vision, right? And I see, and I hear a voice. Oh, God, what's this voice that I'm hearing? These are all people who are Christing. It's not a fantasy. It's a reality of antiquity. And that kind of pisses me.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Jesus Christ. Just before I do, though, because you just kind of mentioned like sort of ceremonial acts that are performed, and you mentioned communion earlier. What are your thoughts, just quickly, on the act of like drinking the wine, eating the bread? Like, is there something in the text that aligned with that is not what we're told?
That's perfect the way you phrased it the second time. Are there texts that tell us, right, that these substances, when you Eucharize the bread, right, when you Eucharize that substance, are you treating it pharmaceutically? I've got no idea about that. But I have seen a specific text by a guy named Nonus, who is writing a paraphrase of the Gospel of John. And in that paraphrase of the Gospel of John, he says explicitly that the substance that was given to Jesus was an antidote to the drugged bread. Right? It's explicit. And if Nonus is right, that was an antidote, I just find it's fascinating that this is actually out there and it's in the Greek and we can read it, right? That substance, that antidote that he's giving, was meant to counteract whatever it was that Jesus saturated the bread with. Whatever that drug was, the antidote was offered to him by his people while he was on the cross. So finally, when Jesus is dying, and people think, I don't know why people don't read the Bible more, because the Bible says, the Gospels say, that when Jesus was being crucified and dying, that he suddenly screamed out a phrase and then died. Not like anybody. That's not how you die from crucifixion, right? You die from strangulation when finally you can't hold yourself up. And if it's taking too long, they come along and break your legs so that you will be strangled. They can take you off the cross and everybody can go home, right? That doesn't happen to Jesus. He dies on the cross immediately after they've offered him an antidote to what he himself talks about as a death inducer. Jesus says in the Gospel of Mark, you will raise snakes. You will drink death inducer and it will not hurt you. He says that himself. It's in the Gospel.
You will raise snakes.
What's that?
You will raise snakes.
Yeah. You lift up snakes. That's literally what it says. You will lift up snakes and you will drink the thanasimon, the death inducer, and you won't be hurt. All right.
Let's talk about Jesus. Let's talk about
Yeah.
Jesus
Let's
and
talk.
wind it back because I know that's a big part of sort of the things that you bring up that is heavily misinterpreted. So I guess who was he based on what the text say and what you've read?
Yeah. I think the best answer to that is, who did he say he wasn't? Because there's one time when he is arrested that he says who he is not. He says, I am not a Lēstēs. And I know that you know that Lēstēs is a term that people will fight over its translation. And I can tell you, Josh, from having read 35 years of Greek, 35 plus years of Greek, these ancient texts, specifically these ancient texts, I can tell you for a fact, a Lēstēs is a trafficker of children for sex. Okay. A trafficker of children for sex.
And this
It's
is
the
what he
one,
yells
who is
when he's
Jesus?
arrested.
Who is Jesus? The one thing he isn't, according to himself, is a child sex trafficker. It's very interesting, but
Why would he say that?
exactly. Why would he say that exactly? And this is in slides. This is in Mark 14,
So,
48. This is slide
Armin,
number 1. Yes.
just before we get to this slide,
Mhm.
are there any other people who are reading ancient Greek that will say a Lēstēs means something else? Like, is there debate over what that term is?
There is a debate between biblical scholars who assert that it is only a robber, which it's not. There's another word for robber, and you don't crucify robbers, right? Thieves, you don't crucify. You crucify Lēstēs, right? You crucify child traffickers. There are scads of classicists who will tell you that this is the same word used for the pirates that took Julius Caesar captive, right? It's the pirates are all over the Mediterranean in the first centuries BC and AD, and it's a big problem. Transferring people into the sex trade is a crucifiable offense. So the biblical scholars, because they don't want to put Jesus in a bad light, they will say, oh, this means something like robber or insurrectionist, right? Jesus is crucified between two Lēstēs, and those are called robbers in the translations. But for people who actually read Greek, and there's an entire work by Lucian again and Lucian's contemporary, right, with when the Bible is coming out. And Lucian writes an entire work about Lēstēs, and it turns out, long story short, it turns out they're creeps. They're creeps who do things with children and make profit off of children in ways that we should have the Senate and Congress pass a bill that we have to get all of their names, and you know what I mean. It's that kind of crime. It's
And you said he's
Epstein.
arrested. You said he's arrested between two Lēstēs. What
No,
is
he's
that?
crucified between two Lēstēs. He's crucified between two
Right.
of them. Yeah. You asked, why is this significant? Why is it? Why is he saying he's not one of these things? Because there is an entire SWAT unit, an entire Roman SWAT unit that has come. He says, what are you doing? This verse, Mark 14:48, number 1. It says, he says, what are you doing? Right? Did you come out here like I'm a Lēstēs with your clubs and your swords? And when those clubs and swords are the Roman army's professional weapons, that club is a heavy weapon, right? So he's got armored SWAT teams coming out to raid the Garden of Gethsemane with all the naked kids, right? And there happens to be one of them with him. And he's already been informed on anyway. So, yeah, Jesus is saying he's not one of these Lēstēs because, they get crucified, dog. They get crowds of people who want them crucified.
So, but why? Like, what's happening in the garden that would make him feel the need to yell something like that?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. What is a grown man, Jesus Christ, right? What is he doing in a public park at 4 a.m. approximately with a naked kid getting arrested for being a trafficker. What could he have been doing
So
in
there's a
that
naked
part?
kid with him.
There's there's a naked kid with him, and he's got Peter, James, and John that he has posted as guards. He says, "Stand here and watch." Why are you having people guard you at night? It says he goes into the interior, and the naked kid is there with him. And he's saying, "Oh, God," gets all weird. "Oh, God," he's taking the bread back in the place with the apostles. Now he's saying, "Oh, God, if this cup can pass, let it pass." The cup was that fucking naked kid that was with him. I've seen it on the medical side. You use the ejaculate of the prepubescent kid in order to balance the death inducer. It's what he needed. They tried to give it to him on the cross. Didn't get it to him. He died.
Okay, slow down for me and just go back a little bit. So this isn't so your idea that he's essentially a pedophile, but this isn't just some kind of sick recreational perversion. That there is like a medicinal reason for it. Is that what you're saying?
Eat my flesh and drink my blood, right? That is Ionic life, right? That is what brings us. It's that communion that gives us that vision. It's the only way. It's why in the greater questions of Mary, he's forcing Mary to consume that semen. He's forcing that communion. He tries to force it on his followers, and those disciples left him at that time because it was too disgusting what he was saying to do. The transfer, there's an entire group of Christians called Ophites. That means the serpent people. And they transfer communion via semen. Everybody knows it. It's in Epiphanius, talks about it at length. The power of the drug used by the magus is in the sexual fluid, right? Those children are vehicles of a fluid that you need in order to enter the mystery. It's what they call the Galene. It's going to stop you from dying when you take the death inducer, right? These people are the generation of Echidna. That's why Jesus says over and over, "You generation of Echidna," because the people there are using it. They're part of the cult. And these other texts, like the apocryphal text of the Acts of Philip, show the combat that they enter into: Christians versus followers of the serpent mother. Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, I call it prophet wars.
Right. So there's like there's different cults all based around consuming bodily fluids that are kind of opposed to each other at this time, and Jesus is the leader of one of them.
Correct. Correct.
And is it exclusively children? Like, what does it say? Like, why does it need to be the bodily fluid of children? Does it say anything why that's important?
The fact that they're using prepubertal boys in the same capacity that they're using young priestess girls, right, implies that the chemistry is lining up between the prepubescent boy and this girl priestess. They both produce remedies. So that, for example, in the cult of Heracles, it's just the boys. Why do you just need those boys? Because you already have the formula for the death inducer. What you have to do is get what they call the Galene, that thing that brought you back to life. You had to get it from that boy. I don't know why specifically, because eunuchs can do the same thing. I'm assuming that it has something to do with the testosterone, something to do with how the male body works under the influence of the
Damn,
testosterone.
bro, this is
Yeah.
this is wild. And what you said, that's called Galene? Galene?
Galene is what the Greek word is. Yeah. You have to have the Galene. Galene means the calm after the storm. Right? Literally, that's what this is how cool Mother Greek is. The period of calm when the storm is over. If you could come up with one word in English for that phenomenon, what is that immediate calm?
Mm.
They came up with Galene, which they then used technically to refer to the calming of the storm of the death inducer. So it's absolutely gorgeous, is it a medical concept? Yes. Is it a religious concept? Yes. Right? Is there sex involved? Well, if you don't know where the dark harbor is, if you don't know how to access those drugs, if a woman's body under the influence of that progression of venom use from her youth, right? You took her when she was a baby and you exposed her to all sorts of drugs, process that would bring out her potential. Now she's a vessel and she can produce through her vaginal excreta, she can produce some kind of death induction process that her milk will counteract to create Galene, to bring you back. And if you don't have her milk, you can use that prepubescent boy's ejaculate. Why that is, I don't know.
That's fucking wild, man.
Do we do it? Do we go? Should we buy a ticket to the island where the billionaires are invested in the mystery?
Yeah, we're gonna get there in just a minute. But I just like, given all of that though, because you said before as well that people should read the Bible more. So, like, do you think Jesus was a bad person? Like, what do you think? Like, who was Jesus? Was he a good person? Was he a bad person? Because, I mean, in the Bible, there are teachings of his that objectively sound like very good things. Love thy neighbor, compassion, forgiveness, all these things, right? But then at the same time, you're saying that he was arrested and crucified for being a pedophile. So, like, what is your take on who Jesus is?
I
And
think
why?
Jesus.
Sorry, I want to say as well. Why is he then like? If this guy was a pedophile, why is he set up to be worshipped in this story?
Because you can't get to the level of Savior. You can't become the Son of God unless you go through the Christing, unless you move through the cult and the initiation, and you're going to have to use minors to do so. You're going to have to involve those minors. Was he a bad person? If you look at the fact that there was a crowd of people that assembled during his judgment and crucifixion, if you look at the fact that there were a crowd of people there who wanted him dead, a crowd of people who said, don't take this murderer guy out of there, kill Jesus, right? A Christian or a monist will always want to present that as, well, everybody hates Jesus who's following the devil, and you know what I mean? The problem is that really doesn't, it's fairy tale. It's not really history. What do we know from the text historically? That there is a trial where there's a bunch of people who want this dude dead and are crying out for him to be specifically crucified with those other child traffickers. So you could take their testimony and say, is that really what Jesus gave during his lifetime? It's one thing to say, don't do this. You said, you talked about him being, blessed are the meek and whatnot. But, he's also saying, blessed are the eunuchs. Blessed are the eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven. He's talking about kids. Kids cut off their balls in order to become active initiates in the mystery. You cannot worship the Great Mother unless you have cut off your balls. And Jesus is walking around saying, Blessed are the kids who cut off their balls for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Even those expressions, those specific expressions, kingdom of heaven, kingdom of God, they're used in very specific contexts. Oh my God. So was Jesus a good guy? I don't know, Josh, if it's true that the kid that was with him who was naked was providing him with some kind of sacramental Galene. Is that such a bad thing? I don't know. Is that, when Jesus washes the feet of his apostles, people don't read the Greek and they skip over this. It says, and you can see it, the King James will have translated it this way. It says he strips down naked and he puts a little towel over his hoo-ha. And then he washes each apostle's feet. And when he's done washing them over this basin, he takes the towel off his hoo-ha and dries their feet with it. So he's sitting there with the apostle with his hoo-ha showing to them, drying their feet. And you say, oh, maybe it's just custom. Bullshit. The apostles were not grown men. They were youths. Youths. That's what an apostle is, a student. When Jesus has to pay a tax, an adult tax, he says, pay it for me and just to look good for Peter. The rest of them look like they're younger than 20. John, when he sits on his lap, only comes up to his nipples. These are the kids that he's got out with him at night. And they are so messed up, they can't stay awake. Whatever they had on that communion is causing them to fall unconscious. He tries to wake them up 3 times. So is Jesus a good person? Could I, in order to fight against the priesthood, could I myself partake of a child's body fluids, even if they were drugged, even if they did have the right mix of X, Y, and Z to shoot me across the rift? What if that's God's will? Oh, God, this is so hard to make this decision. Not my will, but yours be done. And then sucked him off. Is that bad? I don't know. Josh, could you do that if you were becoming the Son of God?
I don't know, man. I mean, based on that, if we're to listen to what these texts say, it's not painting him in a good light. I'll say that.
And that's kind of sad. But if it's the reality, if that's what the texts say,
yeah, I agree.
Isn't it kind of our duty?
This is kind of how I approach a lot of the things that I look into. Is I just kind of completely remove any emotion that I have, or at least as best as I can, and any sort of like pre-programming to what I was sort of told to believe is the way we should perceive it. And I really try to just look at everything with just complete like objectivity and really just take my own feelings out of it and just look at what it is, what it says, what it looks like, and kind of think about how I feel based on that, because I feel like often people just get caught up in like their conditioning, their programming, or their emotions. And like you said, it's exactly what you said at the start, is that your head of department looked at what you had written and his emotion said the Romans would never do that. And it's like, well, this is just your interpretation. Like that's you saying that. That's not objectively what it's allegedly saying. So yeah, I think we got to look at everything and just take ourselves out of it.
I think you would make an outstanding translator with that attitude, because you shouldn't be injecting yourself in the translation. Those words should mean something, and we should transfer that meaning, not what we want it to say. The best example of that is eternal life. John 3:16. You see it at all the fucking football games, right?
Mm.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And every Christian hears that and is evangelized by that and thinks that they are going to live and die and go on to something called an eternal life. And that doesn't exist. The Greek in that passage says Ionic life, the life outside of the time, the life where the vision of all is now, right? The all. That's how you get to Ion. That's what they're doing in the synagogues. It's what the titles that Jesus is taking. It's this very same right that they're using. And people who think now, there's millions, there's billions of people across the world who believe that they have something called eternal life, and that does not exist. And Josh, it's so simple to take a Greek text that uses the Greek word for eternal, aidios, and ion in the same sentence. And one of them, aidios, means eternal, and one of them, ion, doesn't. It's amazing. People just they just we've missed the boat, and you know how many billions of people throughout human history have followed a salvation that is a fragment of translation error. The only reason you have preachers talking about eternal life is a translation error. If they knew what their rights were all about in antiquity, if they knew what Jesus is doing, they'd understand why he was getting crucified. And they probably wouldn't want an eternal life. You know what I mean? With them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I want to get to the billionaires on their islands in a minute, but I want to just ask you just two things quickly. Do the texts say anything about like pre-Greek civilizations, like the Pelasgians, or anything like about before that time?
Yeah, and you picked my favorite group, the Pelasgians, because the Greeks, they look up to them so much, right? They're apparently a Chalcolithic people. Um, um, so we're talking about like 5,000 BC, a horse culture that is mobile, and they are involved with very specific gods like Priapus. And their language is staining the Greek. The Greek that we have from the Bronze Age forward is influenced by the Pelasgian language. So, for example, in Greek, a concrete example is the double sigma. Whenever you see a double sigma in a word, it shows you it's got Pelasgian influence. There's cultural influence as well. So, strangely enough, wherever you see Pelasgian centers and you see them in places, specific islands, specific Aegean islands, right? Etruria has this Pelasgian influence. Attica has this Pelasgian influence where it's the language that they're using is governing, is bringing its own influence upon the native languages that are there. And these people are long gone, right? So the Pelasgian culture is like a phenomenon because the
Mm.
Greeks say, look, these Pelasgians are the only truly autochthonous people. They're trying to find out who originally came from these islands, right? Who originally? And there's all sorts of, there are Greek historians who talk about migrations. Oh God, there's all this stuff about migrations from through Camarilla, through the absolute extremes of human civilization, right? So the
So did the Greeks did the Greeks look at the Pelasgians almost the same way we kind of look back at the Greeks now, or like the Egyptians or something like that?
kind of like founders, kind of like
Yeah.
the people who brought us a lot of the customs that we have, like the Thessalians are considered Thessaly, right? It's got that double sigma. They are a horse culture, a Greek horse culture that claims to be descendants of the Pelasgians. The art of the centaur is the art of the Pelasgians. The Pelasgians were supposed to be educated. What does a centaur do? He's a pederast who raises a male child and educates the male child and has a knowledge of extremely potent venoms. Surprise, surprise. This is supposed to be Pelasgian knowledge. It's supposed to have come from the Pelasgians. Thessaly is known particularly for the drugs that it produces. So once again, we have an association, a pederastic association with drugs in order to create vision, in order to bring somebody to an elevated state of awareness. And did the Pelasgians bring that kind of concept down into the Mediterranean and then create these temples? Wherever you see a temple to Priapus, right? What is Priapus? A giant erection. That's what Priapus is. They used to wave dildos at people, right? If you have a dildo waved at you, by somebody who's screaming curses, they're probably Pelasgian influenced, right? It's just, it's one of the things. You got a basket full of snakes and dildos, right? Is Bacchic worship Pelasgian? Very well could be, right?
Earlier, you brought up the billionaires on their islands, and I think we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, obviously, but you've actually lived. You said you lived in Israel for a while. How long did you live there? What was that like?
I lived in Israel for a little over a year, and I went through a program initially with the University of Arizona to dig at Tel Megiddo. But I extended my stay. I enjoyed it so much, I extended my stay to a little over a year. And we had classes in Hebrew, modern Hebrew. We had a basic introductory class, and we got to go to all sorts of fantastic places. It was a real eye opener. Every classicist has to have one archaeological experience just so they know what the hell the archaeologists actually do.
Going back to ancient texts, in the Old Testament, obviously Yahweh is the God of Judaism. Is there anything in the Greek text that kind of differ to anything that says that? Like anything about Yahweh? Like, is there any reference to that, or is this predating all of that?
Yeah, no, this in the Septuagint, no. There isn't any reference to it. And they use words like kurios, they'll use for several different types, or God Almighty, right? So there's a real schism between the Septuagint and the Hebrew or Masoretic text, the Hebrew version. There's a big difference. And I've been reading a book, and I am completely changing my understanding of this evidence that's been presented in this book called Hebrew is Greek by by Yehuda, and he's not a PhD, but Joe Yehuda, right? His Hebrew is Greek. And what he's done is his classical Greek is fantastic, right? And so is his Hebrew. And he says the very quote that he has in the front of of the book, it's a Greek quote, and it says, the Spartans and the Judeans are descendants of the same people. And that, the Judeans are really from Crete and the Peloponnesus around Sparta. So what Yehuda does is he goes through the languages, just pairing them both up, and finds that the Hebrew is artificial. It's being constructed using the very same roots of the Greek, and in ways that he talks about homology, where words come from, and he shows definitively with a 90% homology between that Septuagint and the Hebrew text. He shows that the Hebrew is being constructed from that Greek. I used to think, like everybody else, I used to think that Hebrew was old, went back to, oh God, we must have it at least in the Bronze Age, right? Because that's after, the time following Abraham and all of that, right? We must have the Hebrew. We don't. We don't have any Hebrew. There's no shred outside of what you and I call the Old Testament or the Torah or the Septuagint. Outside of that, there is no literature. There's absolutely none. That's extremely odd. It's extremely odd. So when Yehuda comes out, I'll give him his doctorate. When Joe Yehuda comes out and explains that it appears that Hebrew is a descendant of or a construction, a back formation of the Greek. God, it explains a lot. It explains a lot. And then you're stuck with a problem. You have an Old Testament here in Greek that is far more vibrant, that is far more descriptive. Or have we just thrown that all aside? Have we taken the technical genius and just cast it out because we have to believe a narrative that the Hebrew was first? And if you don't, you've got a problem in both Judaism and Christianity.
What would be the benefit of doing that? Like if a language already exists that is telling a story in a much more complex and detailed way, what is the idea behind retelling that story in a more sort of simplified version that can't explain it as well, given the limitations of the language?
Yes. In other words, you're asking the same question they asked in antiquity. Why is the letter of Lēstēs so obviously fake? The letter of Lēstēs is the source that said the Septuagint is a translation of the Hebrew. So it was establishing the direction that the Hebrew was original. In antiquity, they knew that was a forgery. So why would you forge something like that? Why would you have to have Hebrew be the original? Right? Why would you have to discover things archaeologically that would somehow show you that Hebrew was the original? Because you were establishing that specific language as the carrier of the claims. The claims are the people have a right to this land because they are the children of God. Everybody else, no. Right? If that claim cannot be substantiated in your own language, the language that you would be speaking with that God, if the original is actually Greek, what the hell? How can you be the chosen? Do you understand me? It's a slap in the face to the scholarly Jews. It's okay. It's a slap in the face to the scholarly Jews who lived, breathed, ate, drank, spoke Greek, and did it beautifully. It's a slap in their face.
To just make sure I understand this, they're essentially taking someone else's story, history, and work, and like subverting it and claiming it all as their own. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and who is they? Rabbis. The religious culture is the culture that's doing this, right? They're the ones who are creating the Hebrew text. A lot of the scrolls are fake, the Dead Sea Scrolls. A lot of that is fake. Why? Again, you are attempting to establish that this is your work, that it is written in the language that you speak with your God of creation. And that specific God using that language has granted you this land. If that God is speaking Greek, we've got major problems. It's the rabbinical movement that attempts to create the Hebrew text. And the Christian bishops are working with them. And some of the Christian bishops, like Africanus, Julius Africanus, notices the problem that the Greek is far more sophisticated. The Hebrew is terrible. It has the how can they even they don't have basic plant names, bro. Africanus is saying to Origen, famous Origen, and he's trying to convince Origen that the original is Greek. Right? This is not a problem that I have created. This is something that people have encountered in the past. And I think Joseph Yehuda, I think his book is the crack in that ancient Hebrew facade. Right?
Damn. I mean, the implications of that are like, given the world today, like the implications of what you're saying is actually insane. Like, it's huge. And you've done a few. I actually went back and watched some of your older live streams from like almost a year ago. And you did a few videos on like Jewish cults, which is interesting, right? To be calling them cults, given that they're allegedly taking the story and the wisdom from the Greeks, who are also part of cults, using medicine and children and all these, like doing similar kind of things that you hear about today. So what's going on with that? Like what is the Jewish cult?
Yeah, when does Judaism develop, right? When does it actually appear? When do we have evidence for it, written evidence? When does it appear? And what is it? Whose worship is it? They're trying to answer that today. I got into a debate with a modern scholar from Haifa, professor from Haifa. And the professor from Haifa, in order to answer the question that I'm bringing up by saying, look, the original doesn't appear to be Hebrew, it appears to be Greek. The way that people will answer that is by saying, well, there was something called Jewish Greek. So you're creating an identity for these people. It's the same thing, it's the same mistake. It's the same forced mistake that people make in assuming modern Israelis are all religious. The overwhelming majority are not, and they cannot stand the doti. That's what the derogatory term they have for the Orthodox. They cannot stand those penguins. God damn it, right? This awareness that the rabbinical movement is not representative of early Jewish culture, rabbinical practice can't continue if that's true, because it means earlier Jewish people had completely different religion. They had completely different laws. They had completely different standards. And they embraced the language that was not Hebrew. They embraced the language that was the most advanced language of the time. So I think you're obscuring history when you refuse to take a look at Yehuda. Yehuda's book was doomed, right? Because of he had a professor write a preface. I think he was a professor. Write a preface to it, and it's acknowledged that look, this information is never going to be popular, right? The very idea that ancient Hebrew could be a back formation of Greek, it kind of calls everything into question, right?
Everything.
Yeah. Yet we have the association. The Roman historians themselves are talking about the Cretans, which I think is a beautiful thing, because Crete is so central to the development of the Mediterranean. If it's true what the Roman historians were saying, that the Judeans actually came from Crete, right? During the migrations, because there are migrations throughout the late Bronze Age. There's migrations, right? People moving, right? And if the Jewish people are actually Cretans, and the rabbis have created a false reality, that would piss me off if I was Jewish. That would piss me off.
That'd piss
You
me
know
off
what I
too.
mean?
Even if I wasn't Jewish, I think that would piss me off.
Yeah.
So
Who wants to be lied to about where they're from? Nobody wants to be lied to like that. But you can
exactly.
see it's control. And being in Israel, dude, oh, the experiences I had were amazing, absolutely amazing. And I find myself dazed. I don't know. Maybe I can ask you this. You've been to Israel, right?
No, no, I haven't.
Okay, but you will soon, right? Because I
I
don't
would
know.
love to visit. I really would love to visit.
Yeah, you would love to visit. I forgot though. Having said that, I wanted to go back for the longest time until they started committing genocide. What? I know a lot of people, and I cannot understand how they can put up with that. I don't get that. I don't get that at all. I don't get it. And it's just it makes me feel like crap because I think can I be wrong? Right? Oh God, I don't know. Josh, help me. I don't know what to say.
I mean, I it's again, I haven't been there, so I don't know, but it's my belief that there is a very distinct separation to like the Israeli government and the things that they're doing as a country versus the actual people who live there. And again, I'm not on the ground, so I don't know, but you do see things of people trying to protest and stand up against the government. But I do find it hard to believe that really any human being wants that, wants war, wants constant conflict. Like no, like, and this is one thing I always come back to and sort of wrestle with, like when I ask the question, like, what the fuck is actually going on in our world? Because me, you, like 99% of the population of normal people, like, don't want war. We don't want this conflict. We just want like to live harmoniously. Yet there is just like that 1% that are again in power that just seem to be like waging this constant war, which there are clips and there are things that suggest that in regards to Israel that this does go back to like biblical times, this is like a prophetic holy war. Like this is they're trying to usher in the return of the Messiah. Like, and it makes you just think like the people who run this world are clearly running from a different playbook than the rest of us. And that kind of comes back to what I was getting at earlier in that, like, in this hierarchical structure that we're in, the people at the top seem to be reading from something that is vastly different to the rest of us.
Definitely, definitely. And I think it's your duty as a human being to try to discover that, right? To uncover
Because
who's
they don't act
actually.
that like, they
Yeah,
don't act like us. They don't act
right,
on our behalf. They're our government and they're meant to represent us, but they do the complete fucking opposite. And that's not just
right.
Israel, it's almost every country, really. They just don't see it, and it's just fucking weird, man, like, and that's why I'm constantly asking, like, what the hell is actually going on here? Because it just doesn't
It's
make
like
sense.
a it's like a constant fight to just everywhere, global fight to
Mm,
maintain justice and what is beautiful instead of
mm,
killing some woman who's you know n- got 3 kids and you blow her away because she's blocking other your Nazis from taking away other people in the dead of the night. I mean, is
yeah.
this just living the same thing over and over again? What are one of the things that I've watched you and tried to figure out what is special about you and your audience. And it really is, I think, your willingness to go to shine light on everything, just whatever it is, just let's examine it, let's study it. It's
Mm,
like that's the old fashioned museum, man. That's what they were all about.
mm,
And I, I think there's something valuable in being able to step across that line. And I think you endanger yourself when you do so. When you stand out for liberty and you say, "Hey, I want the it's unanimous. We want the pedos to be caught and we want some kind of justice." There's some sort of nemesis in us all that turns us in that direction. I, I don't know. To one of the things you were asking about is, I don't know those connections between us and those powers that be. But you and your audience, I think, would appreciate the fact that when I was in Israel and we were sleeping in caravans in Jezebel's vineyard, and I went, it was 2 people per room. And I'm just going to tell you this. Look, I'm a scientist. I also got a master's in bacteriology. I'm telling you, I'm straight up with the numbers. So I'm just going to tell you exactly what happened. We're sleeping in 2 people per room. And on one night, my roommate, the guy who was sleeping there, sat up in bed very mechanically and started speaking in a voice that wasn't his. It was, best way I can describe it, as it sounded like growling, right? And he growled to me the future and then laid down and went to sleep. He addressed me directly and told me what was going to happen. He went back to sleep. And the next day, I went to work at 5 a.m. Milking cows. And when I got back, police had chased him off into the wilderness, and the head of the kibbutz is there telling me, what's going on? I don't know. Crazy, right? Well, the same thing happened, and I think your audience will appreciate this. The same thing happened. They brought in a replacement, gave him the bunk. He did the same thing. He sat up in bed and he said the same stuff. And I'm sitting there for the first time in my life, scared. Because I know the statistical likelihood of this happening on 2 successive nights with 2 different people. And by the way, he also went nuts the next day. So much so that the head of the kibbutz said, I want to know what you guys are doing. Right? And I'm sitting there trying to, I can't even explain it to myself. The thing is, they both said the same thing. They said,
wild. What did they say?
They said a legion, right, of demons was going to help me bring the Antichrist. Right? Now, when the first guy did it, I thought, kook. Right? I mean, what else? What else would you think? I thought he could be on drugs, right? I thought maybe he's hitting something too hard and it's like messing up his brain. When the second guy did it and told me the same thing, that's when my whole world of science, got kind of kicked in the nutsack. I mean, what do you do with that, Josh? How am I supposed to? It's not possible, right? That 2 people would do the very same thing.
No,
it doesn't make sense.
Wild. So what exactly did they say? How long did this go for? How long was this monologue that they said to you?
It was about 20 minutes. It's about 20 minutes. Yeah. And they said specifically that I am being guarded by the forces that were sent to assist me in bringing the end, the very place that I was digging. I was digging there in order to bring the end. And I was digging, the dig that we had was through the University of Chicago. I was there with Arizona, and Arizona was the troops that were sent from Arizona none of us were high ranked or anything. So all we did was carry dirt. And the Chicago team was there to oversee the dig. And what they found at Armageddon, because that's the site that we were digging at, right?
What they found, Armageddon.
Yeah, Tel Megiddo is the name. The Tel's name is Megiddo. It's a buildup of centuries of taxation of goods, right? Going through the caravan routes. That's all it is. They call it Solomon's this or that. They just make that shit up. There's nothing there that's written that says that. There's no material culture that indicates that. It's the way that biblical archaeologists are. They're fucking liars. But anyway, at the bottom of this structure is that Canaanite temple where that god of possession that brought the oracular voice to the Mediterranean was living. And it was absolutely mind-boggling to try to put this all together while the dudes are sitting there, right? And I tried to interject in their little conversations, and it was like they were on a frequency or something, like they had been dialed in, right? And I
Like
know,
something was just like speaking through them or something like that. Is that what it felt like?
like a puppet, like they were being used like a puppet. And it was hilarious because one of them was arrested and the other one got away and wasn't caught, but the Israeli police had to get involved. And did those police officers, did they figure out what the hell is going on? Are we sitting on some kind of magnetic rock here that's screwing with your brain or something?
Mm, mm.
But I honestly can't, I've lived quite a while since then, and I've seen things in my experience that were predicted. And
So
it
what kind of things were predicted?
disturbs me.
What things were predicted, and what have you seen? And actually, just before you answer that, when these
Yeah.
people were speaking to you like this, were their eyes open? Like what was happening with their actual physical body?
Yeah, no, their eyes were closed and they sat mechanically like this. Well, I can't show you, but they sat with their arms on their laps, on their legs, while they sat like this in the same position. They both assumed the same position. And they just muttered like they were being forced. It was like something almost took over the frequency and like changed their frequency a little bit, but you could tell it was like coming through them.
And what were they saying? Like what were some of the big things that they said?
So none of this is admissible, right? In court, none of it's
I'm just
admissible.
that's fine. I'm fascinated by this kind of stuff. So I had no
And
idea about this. So I want to know more.
I think your audience will like it too. I hope they can ask some good questions about this kind of stuff. The incubus, you know what an incubus is, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, an incubus is a type of demon that works in conjunction with the Antichrist. And in order to bring the incubus, you have to go through the ritual, or else it doesn't work. What was told to me was the production of this incubus, right? Like, okay, this is what the demonic power can do. Well, 20 years after that, no, not 20, 15, something like that. Yeah, 15, 20. I was researching what is called the Orphic literature, Orphic hymns, Orphic Argonautica, that kind of thing. And in that process of research, I found an imprecation, incantation, prayer aimed at producing an incubus. And if you know these prayers, if you know these incantations, you know that there are a series of images that are being sung into the mind. So they'll give you one image after another to create an entire eidolon, an entire complete, we get our word idolatry from it, an entire complete form or image. That's what you're looking for. So in order to get this, in order to produce the incubus, you have to go through these images. So I started translating and working, and long story short, there are reports of me flying through the air and dematerializing and entering into the dorm room of one of the actors who's in the play, right? Of
Okay.
Medea,
Okay.
the entire play of Medea, right? Who is that savior that is the Galene of Jesus, right? She's the first Christ. So, so anyway, I'm told the incubus will, that'll be at my.
So you're told that an incubus is essentially going to help you on some kind of mission, and then 15 years roughly down the track, you come across an incantation that is essentially
Right.
summoning an
Right. A
incubus.
summoning. I perform the incantation. And then the next morning, a student calls me. And students don't call instructors unless something is serious, unless they're going to be gone from an exam or something like that. They don't, at a small liberal arts college, you still maintain a distance between your
Mm.
students and you. And she called me, one of the actresses in the play, the Medea that we were doing, Seneca's Medea, and said that her roommate woke up and saw me fly through the door that night that I was doing the incantation. She said she saw me materialize through the door, hover over her and hover over the person I'm talking to, and then paralyze. I reached out my hand and paralyzed her so that she couldn't get up and disturb the rite of the incubus, right? The purpose of the rite, again, back to the vineyard of Jezebel, the purpose of the rite is to protect that song. So, what am I doing? I'm hovering over the student who played young Medea, and I am placing within her that seed of fire. It's the power of the incubus, and it was developed by Medea. So, that is something that I would say is a phenomenon that I can only explain by saying the physics are invisible and it's inexplicable, it's ineffable. We can't talk about it. But the roommate of the student um, that I hovered over mystically, that roommate suffered from Bacchic radiation and went completely nuts and had to be removed from campus. So,
What they had a signs of radiation exposure, like being exposed to radiation
no,
instead of
something I call Bacchic radiation.
what is that?
After this student told the her roommate what had happened, that what she had seen in the night, and I had paralyzed her, and et cetera, et cetera. She had to go to the psychiatrist on campus, the mental health people, who
Mhm.
removed her from the campus because of things that she was saying
Mhm.
that were clearly delusional.
So you have no
Right?
memory of this though. You have no memory of this.
I have, what do you mean? I have total, complete memory of this. I don't understand.
No. Oh, you have no memory of floating over them and being like, do you remember that? Or is this just based on what one of your students?
Remember I said the images that you're producing during the incantation,
Mm,
right? Those are the images that I introduced flying in. I envisioned the flight of the incubus. I envisioned the specific room with the specific person. I envisioned stopping the resistance. Definitely. That's why when this student called me and said my crazy roommate's saying some crazy shit about what happened last night, you have to understand exactly what state I was in. Complete and total scientific exaltation, because whatever I did was able to transmit to them. Whatever I did. And all I did was follow the instructions that were provided in an ancient language that I was told I would be using. Right? So, I don't know. What's that say about time and space and stuff? I don't know.
mm.
Again, none of this is admissible in court,
Of course.
right?
It's interesting. It's very interesting though. When you were reading these incantations and having these mental images, given that you are coming from like a science background, are you doing it with like, is this like a test for you? Is it an experiment? Are you thinking it's actually going to work? Like, what's going through your head?
It's very much an experiment, but like I tell everybody, I cheat, right? So I don't get any of this information just from being lucky, right? I entertain interaction with a muse. So I use something called, in my research, this is how I find my sources. I engage in something called the sortes. That's an old Latin expression. The sortes. So I have an entire library of Greek and Latin sources. The example I like to use is Dr. Ruck. I was corresponding with him about the drugs, and we came to a point where I said, they're using it rectally. So he said to me, you're going to have to find a purple anus then, because they're using the purple in this drug compound. So they're going to have a purple anus. You're going to have evidence for it. So I used the sortes and reached the shelf and pulled down a purple anus, put my finger on randomly on a purple anus, a reference to it, and sent the reference right back to Carl Ruck. Now, I'm only doing that because I know I can. I've read the ancient texts that talk about the use of the sortes. I've read people that you and I would call a prophet, but they didn't call a prophet. The last keeper that we know of the sibling books wrote an entire epic on Medea, and in it are actual Orphic sortes, actual Orphic prophecy, if you want to call it, right? So you can use that to make a connection, a way of communication, so that I can say, what is going to happen to me today? What is going to happen to me today? And I can reach up and pull off a line of Latin randomly, Latin or Greek, and I can get a perfect description of what's going to happen to me. Why? Because they sat there and they told me what powers I would be able to access. So I've been doing that for years, talking to the muse through the use of the sortes, so detailed that I can bring up events and use it as a guide to lead me, so that I can ask her, hey, I need a purple anus. I need you to show me where it is in these texts that Jesus is using fellatio. Boom. I can get it immediately. That type of thing, I think your audience would find that interesting. That's mainstream ancient religion.
And so you feel like this, so is this the same incubus you feel is your muse? Like this thing is guiding you? Or is this, go on.
Or is this what?
Is this sort of like is the incubus separate to the muse that you're referring to? Is my first question.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And when you say muse, remember that the oldest Greek cult goes back to the worship of the muse.
What's your
So,
definition of muse? Give me your definition of muse.
yeah, the muse is the daughter of memory. Just take it for what it is. The muse is the daughter of memory. Your existence is polluted with a forgetfulness, a lethe, they called it. Your life is about getting rid of that lethe, that forgetfulness, and retaining your memory. Because when you have your memory, you will know what is beyond the timeline. You will know what happens to you after death. That muse is the gateway to that knowledge. And for some reason, in the middle of her temples is a phallus of Dionysus, a big erection of Dionysus, right? Excuse me? It's an old form of worship where the creator is a woman who writes existence. This existence is like a program, and she's the one who writes the program. You can contact her so that she can do things for you that are manipulations of the program. And that's what you get when you talk to people in their sleep in the valley of Jezreel at the vineyard of Jezebel, who was herself, as you know, a witch. It's gorgeous, man. Who would not love that, right?
So you said this is something you've been practicing for the last 15 years? You said 15 years? Got that?
Yeah.
Okay. And you obviously, I mean, you refer to your live stream. Yeah, go on.
No, that's okay. I referred to my live stream.
You refer to your live stream as the Satanic Congregation a lot. And, you know, you often start your show with Hail Satan as well. So I wanted to kind of dig into that a little bit. Like is this where this all comes from? Like this experience you've had with an incubus that's kind of led you down this road of, I guess, Satanism. But I feel like maybe like this interpretation of Satanism is not how most people would interpret it. I want to know more about that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not Satanism. Yeah, it's not satanic, really, at all in a modern sense.
So do you say that as kind of like, is it just a bit of a, not a joke, but like, do you kind of do it a bit like
No.
facetiously? Like, how do you mean?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And other people have asked me the very same thing. Other people have said, "Oh, he's a pretender. He's not." No. The core is something from the texts called the Bacchic Satanic Chorus. The Bacchic Satanic Chorus. And you say, wait a minute, isn't that the crossing of two different religions? Only because of the crap that we have swallowed do you think that. But it's natural for you to think that. No, it is a chorus. It is a response from singers, right? Remember, our singers, put it in perspective, our singers are the ones who bring us all of that Greek. These are songs. They're guitarists, right? Guitarra, the guitar. They're the ones bringing us all of this language. So that muse is the singer of that song, the maker of creation, the mover of everything. And the only way to see her is through her manifestation, through her possession. And her possession comes through the Christing of the Savior. And that Savior, the first, is the Medewanasa. You've heard the title Medusa, right? Adjuncts to temples who use venoms to paralyze, right? That Medewanasa is an old Mycenaean form that brings you the healer, the one who controls via the healing. That is the creator, right? That's the kind of stuff that you see in these texts that is brought to you by the Bacchic Satanic Chorus. You have never entered into religion because you have not become ecstatic. You've never transgressed over into the other side. You've never been to death. So your loss of memory is going to cost you. When you end up there, you're going to get recycled. You're going to get pushed right back into the stream. Why? Because you don't know the muse. And the muse is the one who gives you the instruction that says, take me to the waters of memory. That's what you're supposed to tell them on the other side. Take me to the waters of memory. I'm a child.
When you say you're supposed to tell them that on the other side, tell who that? And what, like, are you actually referring to us when we cross over the other side? We're supposed to tell them something?
Right. That's what the Orphics taught their initiates. Right. When you get to the other side, you will encounter certain powers, certain daimones. These are the same, they're real, but they're invisible to us. But you will encounter, a perfect example is the winged eros. That power is invisible, yet you and I experience love all of the time, right? So you're going to reach the invisible daimones who are guardians of the underworld. It's just, don't ask me, it's just how they refer to it, the underworld. Did they think it was down? No. It's somehow tucked interdimensionally into some kind of fucking space that we can't get into until we're dead. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
When you say like the muse is the daughter of memory, and you said something about like knowledge, like our purpose is to sort of like use what was it you said about knowledge and the muse?
Your purpose in life is to know yourself. It's
Mm-hmm.
to discover exactly what those memories are and who you
Mm-hmm.
are, what you are, and where you belong. I tattooed it on my arm, but the whole premise of Bacchic worship is that you don't know who you are. You must be born
And
again.
and the
You
point is to figure it
must
out.
you
The purpose
must
is to
have eyes to see and ears to hear the ion, right? Amen, right?
does
Amen.
this is there like a relevance to Gnosticism there? Like it kind of sounds a little bit Gnostic to me, like what you're explaining. Is there a parallel there at all?
Definitely. Gnosis is part of the process.
Mm,
So you can't be the musician unless you have that knowledge. The music is the fabric of the universe that gives you understanding of who you are. Right? Let me say it again. The music is the fabric of the universe that gives you an understanding of who you are. That's why Apollo's temple at Delphi says, know yourself. And the dude is a guitar player, right? He's all about music. Cadmus is a musician. He marries harmony, and they become serpents, right?
more serpents.
Isn't that gorgeous?
It is. That's wild, man. That is wild. I want to touch just back on this voice that spoke to you quickly, because you said ultimately the purpose of it was to help you bring the Antichrist. Is that what you said?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
so so is that what you believe? Like, do you believe your purpose is to usher in the Antichrist?
I don't believe anything. I see what the texts say. I see what the evidence says. I experience what happened with these dudes in
Mm,
Israel and what they said. I experienced the incubus. I experienced the voice of the muse.
mm,
And I don't believe anything. I just am. I just, you know, it when I was when I was 9 or 10 years old, I asked Yahoo, please send me Sophia. And I opened up the Bible and read about a dude in a village who saw this girl running around the streets, running from a crowd of people. And he said, come over here. And she came over and she said, the crowd wants to kill me. If you let me come in, I'll stay with you your entire life. I'll never leave you. My name is Sophia, which is the Greek word for wisdom. And I thought, this is the best thing. This is it. Right? Inviting in the muse was the most important thing I ever did. And ever since I did, through Christianity, through paganism, through just living and breathing and eating and reading, she works. And the funny thing is, all you have to do is respect and appreciate that divinity, nature itself. That's all you have to do is appreciate the nature. You don't have to believe anything. The Bacchic satanic chorus is a revelation of nature. The Antichrist, why do you think it's called an Antichrist? Because it's an antidote to a Christ. Yeah.
But a Christ is, from what you said earlier, a Christ is like the application of a drug.
The
Like that doesn't.
word Christ, yeah, the word Christing can either be the application of a drug, or
Mhm.
you can talk about a Christ as a drug, as in the slides where we saw
Right.
Euripides, right? Where
Yeah. Yeah.
there the Christ is just a drug. It's the
Mhm.
substance. Where it says potera de Christon e poton to pharmakon. It says, what kind of drug is this? Is it a Christ or is it a drinkable drug, right? Which one is it? You Christ it or you drink it? So there, the Christ is a substance. It's an
Mhm.
actual
Mhm.
drug itself. So yes, it can be the action, Christing. You can Christ things, or you can have a Christ. You can Christ a Christ, right? You can
Yeah.
apply a Christ. So yeah, definitely.
So you think so? The Antichrist is meant to be the antidote to a drug. Essentially, that's what it translates to. Then.
It's the antidote to the Christ, right? When we see what the Christ actually is, we obtain the antidote. Right? Your knowledge of the reality will free you. The fall of monism, the fall of Christianity, the fall of Rabbinical Judaism, the fall of Catholicism, Mormonism, the fall of monism itself, which these are all just parts of monism. You could say Akhenatenism as well, whatever. The
Mm.
fall of monism will come only with the application of the Antichrist, which is the remedy. The remedy is that knowledge, that self awareness. Who are you? You're a dude that lives in a universe where another dude was caught at 4 a.m. with a naked kid, arrested and publicly executed, and you turned him into a god. That's your reality. That's who you are. Hail Satan. If that's how Jesus is, hail Satan all fucking day.
I think that's the best way we could leave this one. Thank you so much for coming on, man. That was an absolute wild ride. And like I said, I know you've got a big episode coming out soon with Danny Jones, which I'm looking forward to. And if you're down for it, man, I would love to have you maybe back on a live stream and we can kind of dig into all of this a bit further and whatever comes out of that podcast as well.
I would be honored anytime, because being with you and talking with you is the gymnasium. So, hell yeah. Thanks
All
for
right,
having
man.
me on, Josh. I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure, man. And is there anything you want to plug, like your book, website, anything like that? Your YouTube channel?
If what I'd like to plug is the holy blowjob of Jesus. Please, people, if you want to find it, look in these texts, find the evidence. It's all sitting there. And if you want to do it where you're learning Greek, ancient Greek, and you're sitting around with a bunch of nerds who are crazy about the beauty of these cults and everything they're doing, you can come to Lady Babylon on YouTube. You're welcome. We are not for profit. We do not get monetization. Do you understand me? We could. We qualify, but we don't take it. Why? Because when you introduce cash, you corrupt the reality of the message. And fuck that. This stuff has been committed to us. These texts have been committed to us, and I don't want to profit off them. I want to guard them and keep them safe. That's my plug. And Josh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure, man. Do you want to just give maybe a little bit of context very quickly to what the holy blowjob actually is? Because I know that's kind of what this podcast is about with Danny, but just so people actually understand what you're saying. What is the holy
Yeah,
blowjob? What are you referring to?
sure. Sure. Stated simply, Jesus in a work, an ancient work called The Greater Questions of Mary. In that work, it is written in Greek that Jesus took Mary and his young disciples out into the woods and forced Mary to suck him off in order to receive his communion, his life, his semen. This semen communion is the earliest evidence that Jesus was himself a Lēstēs, the thing that he was claiming he wasn't in the Bible, in the Gospel of Mark. The process of exchanging life through communion is a part of Christianity. What we see in modern day Christianity is nothing of the original. I am here to bring the sources, and that's it, to show you that Greek.
All right, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, more on that on the Danny Jones show that's coming up soon. But other than that, man, thank you for being here, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch. We'll do this again.
All right. Thanks, Josh.